What would happen if Synology wasn't around in the market? Let's be honest, when it comes to network attached storage for the prosumer, for the small business, for just general the enthusiast, Synology has a large hold on the market. They are still considered the number one, largely down to Synology's DSM platform. Slightly less so for the hardware, I think that'd be fair to say. But in the last few years, there has definitely been a trend by the business to more towards larger business, more towards enterprise. And although they have certainly not abandoned the home market, and they've certainly not abandoned the prosumer market, I think it would be fair to say that their attention has been somewhat drawn elsewhere. And because of that, in the last 18 months to 2 years, I've seen increasing comments here on YouTube and on NAS Compare's website, plug, about a lot of users saying things like, my current Synology will be my last. They are going towards a non-consumer stance. Lots of people getting very, very angry at decisions by the brand with regards to compatibility, with regards to where they seem to be gearing a lot of their R&D, a slowdown on particular NAS hardware releases, the hardware that's actually arriving in those systems getting less and less exciting, if that is the right word, and ultimately there's more and more indications that Synology is not trying to occupy the same prosumer enthusiast small business stance that they always have, and are trying to chasing the money a little bit, I think it might be fair to say. And that's what this video is about. Maybe you're an existing Synology user that wants to kind of look out the window and see what everyone else is up to these days, or you are someone that was on the verge of buying a network attached storage device and you are thinking, well, if it isn't Synology, who is it? Where is my money and my data going to go? We're going to go through the big players right now. We're going to go through who are vying over for the main top spot there, at least with regards to this particular 3 or 4 different sectors here. And keep in mind, these are not in any order. I'm not scaling these down to most or least likely. They are all in the hat for one reason or another. But let's go and start.
I would not take the road to Moria unless I had no other choice.
Let's be honest, if Synology was to exit by their own choice or otherwise this particular sector of the market, the brand that stands to ease into that position the quickest and the easiest is probably going to be QNAP. They've always been kind of the Pepsi versus Cola of this industry, at least as far as network attached storage devices in desktop and rack mount up to a certain point, that small medium business tier, and they'd be the brand I think a lot of users would just assume would occupy that space. But the reality is nowhere near that straightforward, because Synology, as already discussed, have already started slowly easing out. And even though they've been easing out, QNAP has not filled the void for reasons we'll talk about more later on. Now, they have a great software platform in QTS and QUTS. We're actually seeing the ZFS platform of QTS start to become available on smaller devices like this Intel Celeron based one as well. So it isn't just about the ext4 version either. Also, they have multiple client apps for mobile, for desktop. They've got business applications, backup applications, multimedia applications there. They have a huge range of hardware that ranges from this discrete flash system all the way up to the killer rack mount, although they're not really part of this discussion, and ultimately have been in the market for over 20 years. They're even in one of the few Taiwanese-based companies that's still in that bigger circle that Synology occupies well. And if you're anyone that's been watching security and also security provisions, at least by governmental bodies and authorizations like the NDAA and TAA, then you'll be aware that security concerns for remote access data, be it for surveillance, be it for just business storage, has geared a lot more towards Taiwanese businesses than it has the Chinese. More on that later on. Now, why is it that QNAP wouldn't just immediately de facto take the space? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, there was all of those security problems. Back in 2021 and 2022, you had things like Deadbolt, you had QLocker, you had QSnatch. They were hit by a variety of different ransomwares. A lot of people found that the security on these systems was nowhere near as robust, or at least wasn't being handled as robustly as it was on the Synology platform. And I think that stink is going to hang around. It's a real shame to bring it up, and they're not the only ones, by the way. Several other brands on today's video have also been hit by the same thing, as well as Synology themselves with Synolocker a decade ago. But there's still no avoiding that due to the number of them in such a short period of time, relatively speaking, it did put some users off. Also, the software is a little inconsistent at times. Synology have spent a lot of money on that software to be as smooth as silk. Unfortunately, that has led to hardware that has been quite boring for a lot of users. Ultimately, the QNAP platform still probably would be the one that would occupy any space that would be left if Synology was by choice or by public demand out of that main sector of the market, but still they are known by no means completely ready to fill that void currently. They're getting better. They've improved a lot of their security with bounty programs, increased pen testing, rigorous and a great deal more enforced security provisions and defaults in their system, but it's still going to be a while before people wipe that stuff away.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Seriously, who thought these guys would be in a video like this after such a short period of time? But there's no denying that the splash that UGREEN have made in the NAS market by throwing a lot of money at the wall, let's be realistic in terms of hardware availability, in terms of sending units to every single reviewer in the universe, they've done a very good job of making a big splash very, very quickly. And a lot of users are excited in their hardware product there. The software, and we'll get onto that in a moment, is definitely no DSM, but at least in terms of hardware and price point, you are getting a lot for your money. Also, then rocking out the gate with 6 to 7 solutions on day one, and have already started revealing their newer generation of devices, has clearly shown that they are not a brand that's trying to dip a toe in and then go back to the shower room. They want to linger in this market. Now, when I talk about the software, their software UGOS is just not there. There's loads of things that are missing from it, and although it is getting better with time, it's just not as capable. There's still no iSCSI target application there. They have interjected a virtual machine tool there, but it's very rudimentary. There isn't any two-factor authentication. The security system scanner tool isn't great, and as will become the case of later on in this video as well, there is always going to be an element of distrust, unfortunately, of Chinese companies. And again, whether you want to think it's a few bad apples have ruined the orchard or that it's a consistent problem, there's no avoiding that there are going to be businesses, enthusiasts and prosumers, who are the sectors we're talking about today, who will not want to jump on board a UGREEN NAS for lots of reasons. It's great hardware, it's well put together, but with inconsistent and slightly lackluster software, although it is responsive, is not very feature rich. And that combined with a platform that started out, at least in the West, in terms of network attached storage on crowdfunding, which always feels dicey. And then finally, the fact that when they have arrived into this market space, their availability is not very good. It's only available in the US and Berlin currently. They're increasing the number of retailers, but sorry, not Berlin, Germany. But if it's only Germany and only the US that it's available in, it really limits the capacity for, say, the rest of Europe to move away from another brand. Or as their next solution, think, am I going to go with a brand if their global reach doesn't seemingly be very broad?
I'm fed up with this world.
Asustor, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. They are a brand that has been around in the world of network attached storage for a very long time, but unfortunately have never been able to make a meaningful dent in the likes of Synology or QNAP. Well, that is until the last 18 months or so, maybe even 2 years. The minute they started rolling out newer generations of their Aoostar series and then eventually the Flashstor series, they made waves. They were producing hardware that was turnkey with its own operating system on board, and genuinely hardware challenging solutions where a system like this, which has got 12 NVMEs, a 10 GBE port there on the rear, a quad-core Intel Celeron processor, and 4 gig of memory that could be scaled up to 16, this rocking out for $750 to $799, it's very tough to build something like that DIY, and they're giving you a turnkey NAS solution that includes 3 years of hardware warranty and the operating system on board with countless mobile applications, an HDMI GUI, a great fully featured set within the software platform that, although lacks some of the AAA plus apps of a Synology or a QNAP, some of them AI based, some of them just virtual deployment based, still nonetheless arrives with a great smooth software platform that, although isn't going to excite you, it nails down the rudimentary things very, very well. So why do we think, one, they could occupy the space, and two, why might they not do so? Well, number one, they're still not a huge company. So although they are getting increasingly popular now, and they're already on the basis of rolling out the Aoostar Gen 3 and the Aoostar Gen 2 series to a lot of anticipation, I might add, the rest of their range is still not as involved or as exciting. It makes the complete range of Asustor solutions a case of these solutions are exciting and the rest end up looking a little bit pasty by comparison. Also on top of that, although they do have global availability, it's nowhere near as broad as the likes of QNAP or Asus or Synology there. Increasingly, although we are seeing more availability of Asustor solutions, they don't have the support network or the offices of, say, QNAP, who have a lot more places around the world where you can talk one-to-one. It doesn't stop them covering it. I've spoke with Asustor. They are a multilingual company, and at Computex, they have a huge range of staff that cover different regions, that cover different languages. They are able to do a lot more than you would think for a company of this scale, but no denying that as a brand, they are still smaller than the other brands, and the idea of filling a void that Synology might leave in its wake if it moved more towards businesses, leaving, again, prosumer enthusiasts or small businesses to start looking elsewhere. I'm not sure Asustor has got the muscle currently to occupy that space that Synology might leave behind.
Right, that's it. I've had enough.
Much like Asustor, Terramaster is another one of those always the bridesmaid, never the bride brands. They have been in the world of NAS for many years. They must have gone over the 10-year mark by now, but nevertheless, they are a brand that's evolved very, very quickly. They're a Chinese-based brand, so once again, there is definitely always going to be a few of those elements of consumer, let's say, apprehension about brands that are based in China, but still nonetheless, Terramaster has had a growing range of solutions, and their latest 2024 series that they've launched seemingly way before everyone else has launched their latest refreshes of a lot of their solutions are genuinely exciting. From their new dual 10GBE solutions, rocking out with new i5 processors, their new flash solutions like this one, new rack mount solutions, and some really quite fantastically powerful Intel i7 CPU rack mounts that are providing users with well-stacked rack mount solutions of varying scales, but more importantly, doing so with integrated graphics and Intel Core processors, something that today really has only been offered by the likes of QNAP. Now, where do they fall short? Their software is probably the more inconsistent feeling of all of them. Even though they've rocked out recently with TOS 6, TOS 6 still doesn't feel as polished as some of the other NAS operating systems out there. There's nowhere near the same number of client tools for desktop and mobile devices. A lot of their applications, there is a design inconsistency between different apps, and although there is less of a reliance on third-party apps than there was before, given they've now got a VM app, a Docker app, a surveillance app, an AI photo recognition app, it still isn't a platform that screams the premium feel of a Synology. And although prosumers and enthusiasts may quite like it, I think business users who are moving away from Synology, or at least considering that move, are not going to feel that this software is as polished or as supported. Now, another thing to keep in mind, and this is true of Asustor as well, that both of those brands allow you to install third-party operating systems. More on that later on, but it means that you can take advantage of TrueNAS and Asustor on these without affecting your hardware warranty. And certainly, enthusiasts and prosumers really like that. Ultimately, they are still always going to be labelled the more affordable and budget and value tier of the NAS world, but they are getting better, and the standard of hardware that Terramaster are bringing to the bat is increasing all the time. It's just a question of the software still not feeling fully ready.
Are we the baddies?
UniFi. As rumours continue to circulate about the idea of the brand finally working on its own network-attached storage device, which, at least at the time of recording, is by no means confirmed, we have to at least acknowledge that if Synology were to move out of this particular area of the storage market for prosumers, enthusiasts and small businesses, very few brands would be in a better position in terms of software than UniFi, because it is one of their big USPs, their unified platform and ease of use, which is pretty darn good. Let's be realistic. A lot of the UniFi controller and how it interacts with other devices in a seamless nature is really kind of unparalleled in the market when it comes to its usability and clarity of presentation. Now, one would assume they would affect that same level of UX and GUI and just overall design towards their own NAS. So if it is true that they are working on a NAS or just some plaything and they decide it's not going to work, then they would definitely be a player in this market space. A lot of users currently who are with UniFi have a unified network of cameras, of doorbells, of switches, of all kinds of devices in their local area network, but they use a Synology NAS, and they're not a big fan of utilising a secondary platform, opening up potential secondary attack vectors and openings in their network when what they want is a unified network. So if UniFi was to try and enter the NAS space, I think they have the potential to challenge any gap that Synology could leave behind them in the sectors that we're discussing, because they already exist within that sector and they're not held back by the baggage of some of the NAS brands we've discussed who have been impacted by ransomware to a larger degree. When we were talking about QNAP, it was worth highlighting that some of the ransomware that they were impacted by, such as Deadbolt, also impacted Terramaster and Asustor. This is one of the brands that wasn't, because of that unified network. It doesn't make them bulletproof. Let's face it, everyone needs a security advisory because these things happen. But nonetheless, if UniFi was to roll out a NAS system the way things seem to look, I think they might be in a very good position to occupy that space. But we also have to realistically see they have no NAS right now. They have UNVRs that have got a bunch of hard drive bays. They've got things like the Dream Machine here, which has got hard drive bays. But that ain't a NAS. And we also have to acknowledge that even though in terms of their software reputation and network and hardware deployments, that they do exist in the spaces that we've discussed, they have no pedigree in the world of NAS. And therefore, any solution they bring out is probably not going to challenge Synology anytime soon in terms of actual software feature set. Because if we look at UniFi controls and we look at UniFi networking, it does a very good job within networking, but almost none of it is NAS based. You can mod a UNVR to make that storage a bit SMB accessible, but again, it's not authorized or official. And a lot of the hardware that goes into the UNVRs and the Dream Machines are based on ARM-based processors that aren't really going to challenge anyone too soon. Ultimately, what I'm saying is, whatever it is that UniFi plan to do eventually, we assume, in the NAS market, one assumes they would go for this demographic that we've discussed, and whether they would succeed in it would come down a lot to just how many features and just how deep they go into the world of NAS with whatever it is they're working on.
Come on, stupid. Oh.
DIY, or BYO, build your own. And let's be honest, when it comes to building your own NAS solution, the last few years have been an absolute gold mine. We're seeing lots and more solutions arrive in the market that are OS-free. That is to say, they arrive without an operating system. Now, there are going to be some of you watching this thinking, well, the whole reason I went for a Synology is it was a turnkey NAS solution. I want that hardware, software, I want my handheld, I want to know that my system's just going to do its job and shut up, and I get that. But as Synology moves more and more towards the enterprise space for a lot of users, it should be said that there is this growing market coming out of China, coming out of even Taiwan, that are producing solutions that do not have an operating system on board or arrive with support in one form or another of Unraid, of TrueNAS, of OpenMediaVault, of Proxmox. And indeed, as these solutions are arriving and they don't have to leverage the investment and the research and the profit margin in the software, it allows them to be a great deal more affordable in terms of hardware. Brands like Aoostar have done a really good job of really providing more for your money in real, genuinely NAS solution optimized devices. On the other hand, you've got crowdfunding solutions from Link Plus, from Icewell, with things like the Zimmer Cube. They're arriving with software, but you're not locked into it. You can use third-party software if you choose. And then you've got new DIY NAS solutions in motherboard form, where it's pre-soldered mobile SoC processors that can range from the very efficient N100 all the way up to i9 processors from Intel in the 11th, 12th, and 13th gen. So if you are looking at a solution for the enthusiast, for the prosumer, slightly less so for the small business, more on that in a moment, these actually present a very good opportunity to make the most of your money. However, there's no avoiding, these are not straightforward solutions in the way that this is. And that's why them occupying any kind of space that Synology could via intentionally or accidentally leave open, it's going to be very tough to imagine them filling that space so readily. There is a higher skill level, the learning curve is steeper, and in particular for small businesses and those that go with the full DIY route, there is just none of the set up and forget flexibility and ease of mind that you get with that Synology solution. Things like the warranty. A lot of these solutions that are purchased from, Alibaba, AliExpress, eBay and Amazon, a lot of these OS-free solutions, some of them arrive with 6 months to a year of warranty, and some of them have longer warranties that very rarely get honoured, with plenty of stories online of disappointed customers. That's what I mean about the small business tier almost certainly being less interested or enthusiastic about this, because realistically they are not the target demo. It is going to come down to those users with more time and users that are prepared to spend the extra time instead of money on setting, configuring and maintaining their system. But there you go. If you are an existing Synology NAS user and you were slightly wondering about what things are like on the other side of the road and is the grass greener, I hope this video has been helpful. If you're in the market right now to buy your very first network attached storage solution and you're slightly worried that Synology is going a slightly enterprisey route, I also hope this video has given you some understanding about what other brands in this market space are offering right now. Now, maybe I've not covered a point that you thought was important. If that's the case, that's what the comments are for. It'll be interesting to see a year, 2 years from now, just where Synology plans to be, because they are still arguably the market leader. But I think it would be fair to say that the race has a lot more horses in it at the moment. Let me know what you think. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.